The Galactic Alliance flagship hung silently above Earth, its massive silver structure reflecting the blue curve of the planet below. Inside its observation chamber, diplomats, scholars, and military observers from dozens of species gathered around a wide circular platform. Transparent walls showed moving clouds drifting across oceans, lightning flashing in distant storms, and the glow of cities that never seemed to sleep. Princess Valera stood at the center, tall and composed, her posture perfect as always. She had been trained since childhood to observe without judgment and to speak only after understanding. Her species valued efficiency, balance, and careful use of energy. Work was measured, structured, and always limited to prevent harm to the body and mind. Earth fascinated her. Humans had only recently joined the Alliance. Their technology was considered developing, their political systems complicated, and their emotional behavior unpredictable. Yet reports from trade officers and explorers described something strange about them. They moved constantly. They built, repaired, created, and struggled without clear rest cycles. Some Alliance analysts believed it was a sign of instability. Others suspected it might be a hidden strength. Today's meeting was meant to clarify that mystery. Across from her stood Daniel Reyes, Earth's primary cultural liaison. He looked calm despite the attention of the entire council. He wore simple clothing rather than ceremonial attire, something that had confused many alien delegates. Humans rarely followed expected patterns. Valera studied him carefully. His heartbeat was slightly elevated but steady. His eyes moved between speakers with focus. He looked tired, yet alert, a contradiction she had already noticed in many humans. The council moderator signaled for the discussion to begin. One delegate spoke first, a tall insectoid scholar from a system known for precise biological studies. Human activity patterns remain inconsistent with known endurance limits. Clarification is required. Daniel nodded politely. I'll answer as best I can. Questions followed quickly about human sleep cycles, work culture, economic pressures, and emotional motivations. Daniel responded with calm honesty, sometimes pausing to find simple explanations for concepts that seemed normal to humans but foreign to others. Valera listened quietly until a thought formed clearly in her mind. She stepped forward slightly and the room became still. When royalty spoke, others listened. I have a question, she said, her voice carried across the chamber, soft but clear. How many times per day do humans work? The translation system paused, searching for context. Several delegates tilted their heads, unsure they understood. Daniel blinked once, surprised. He seemed to consider how to answer. Well, he said slowly, most humans work once per day. The princess waited for more, but he stopped speaking. She frowned slightly. Define once. He smiled faintly, realizing the confusion. A single work period, usually 8 hours, sometimes more. The translator hesitated again, recalculating. Valera felt certain there had been an error. Her people could only sustain focused work for a short cycle before requiring rest to avoid neurological overload. Even the most resilient species in the Alliance followed structured intervals. Clarify, she said. You mean 8 hours divided into multiple segments with recovery periods? Daniel shook his head gently. No, continuous. Silence fell across the chamber. Several alien advisors exchanged startled looks. One emitted a low clicking sound that indicated disbelief. Valera felt a flicker of curiosity mixed with doubt. That exceeds recommended biological limits for most sentient species, she said carefully. Daniel shrugged slightly. Humans are used to it. She studied him more closely. There were faint shadows beneath his eyes. His posture suggested fatigue he did not acknowledge. Are humans compelled by authority to maintain such schedules? She asked. Sometimes, he admitted, but often it's choice. Or necessity. The word necessity caught her attention. What necessity? He hesitated, then answered simply. Responsibilities, people depending on you, goals you want to reach. The translator rendered the sentence perfectly, but its meaning felt incomplete. Her species valued responsibility as well, yet never at the cost of physical stability. She leaned forward slightly. And after this continuous work period, what occurs? Most go home, Daniel said. Then they cook, clean, take care of family, learn new skills, work on hobbies, sometimes second jobs. A ripple of murmurs spread through the council. Valera felt genuine confusion. You are describing multiple work sessions. Daniel shook his head again. We usually don't call it that. Then what do humans call it? He paused, thinking. Life. The word echoed through the chamber. Valera felt an unfamiliar sensation, uncertainty. She had studied hundreds of species, yet none described effort in such an unstructured way. For her people, energy was carefully protected. Overexertion was considered irrational, but humans seemed to accept it casually. The council moderator asked additional questions, but her thoughts remained fixed on the earlier exchange. Eventually, she spoke again. I request observational access, she said. Direct verification. The room quieted. Observational missions were serious commitments. Daniel nodded. We can arrange that. Within hours, authorization was granted. The following day, Princess Valera stood inside a human city. The air felt different, warmer, heavier, filled with sounds and movement. Vehicles rushed past. People walked quickly, carrying bags, speaking into devices, laughing, arguing, planning. Nothing slowed. She watched construction workers lifting heavy materials beneath bright sunlight. Their bodies showed signs of strain, yet they continued steadily. She observed a group of students leaving a school building. Instead of resting, they gathered at a nearby cafe, opening portable computers and studying. She visited a medical facility where staff moved rapidly between rooms. Some had been awake through the night, yet still smiled at patients. Her internal data analysis struggled to reconcile what she saw. Energy output remained high despite measurable fatigue indicators. When she asked Daniel quietly why humans continued, he gave the same answer as before. Because someone depends on us. The simplicity frustrated her. Dependence existed in every civilization, yet only humans appeared to interpret it as permission to ignore limits. Later, she observed a parent carrying a sleeping child while speaking on a communication device about work tasks. Another person exercised after finishing a long shift. A group gathered to repair a neighbor's home without payment. The pattern repeated endlessly. Humans moved from one responsibility to another without clear separation. She felt both admiration and concern. By evening, she had recorded more data than expected. Her advisors recommended rest, but she declined. Curiosity drove her forward. Tomorrow, she said to Daniel, I will follow a single human from beginning to end of their day. He nodded. That's probably the best way to understand. She looked back toward the glowing city lights. For the first time, she wondered if the question she had asked in the council chamber had been too simple. How many times do humans work daily? Perhaps the true question was something else entirely. She just did not know what yet. Princess Valera stood near the window of the temporary observation residence provided by the Galactic Alliance. The city below was already awake even though the sky still held the soft gray light of early morning. Vehicles moved in steady streams, lights blinking, people walking quickly along streets. Humans began their days long before the sun fully rose, and this alone puzzled her. Daniel Reyes entered quietly, holding a small device that displayed the schedule for the day's observation. The subject is ready, he said. Her name is Elena Morris. She agreed to let you follow her normal routine. Valera nodded. She had studied Elena's background briefly. She was not famous, not a leader, not an elite warrior or scientist. She was described simply as a hospital nurse. That was exactly why Valera had chosen her. She wanted to understand the average human. They arrived outside a modest apartment building just before dawn. The air felt cool, and faint sounds of distant traffic echoed between buildings. Lights turned on behind several windows as people prepared for work. At precisely 5 o'clock, Elena opened her door. She looked slightly surprised by the presence of alien observers but smiled politely. She moved quickly, locking her door while adjusting a bag over her shoulder. Good morning, she said. I hope you don't mind if we walk and talk. I'm already late. Valera followed closely, observing every movement. Elena walked at a fast pace, checking messages on a small handheld device while navigating through crowds. Do you always move this quickly? Valera asked. Elena laughed softly. Pretty much. If I slow down, everything falls behind. Valera recorded the answer but felt it lacked precision. They entered public transport filled with commuters. Some people leaned against walls with eyes half closed, others typed rapidly on screens, and a few drank hot beverages that released clouds of steam. Elena, Valera asked carefully, how long did you rest before beginning today's activities? About 6 hours, Elena replied. Could have used more, but that's life. Valera's sensors indicated mild fatigue levels already present. Is this considered optimal for your species? Alina smiled. Probably not, but we make do. The phrase, make do, seemed to carry emotional weight beyond its literal meaning. When they arrived at the hospital, the pace intensified immediately. Staff members greeted each other quickly and moved toward different departments without delay. Valera watched Alina change into work attire and begin reviewing patient information. Within minutes, emergencies arrived. Monitors beeped, voices called out instructions, and movement became constant. Alina transitioned from one task to another with practiced efficiency. She comforted a frightened child, assisted a doctor during treatment, explained procedures to worried family members, and documented everything carefully. Valera monitored her biological signals through approved scanning equipment. Heart rate increased. Stress indicators rose. Muscles showed strain, yet Alina did not slow down. Several hours passed without a significant break. "Why does she not pause?" Valera asked Daniel quietly. "Because there's always another patient," he answered. During a brief moment between tasks, Valera approached Alina. "Your body shows signs of fatigue," she said. "Why do you continue instead of resting?" Alina wiped her hands and gave a small shrug. "If I stop, someone else has to work harder or someone waits longer for help, so I keep going." The logic was simple yet difficult for Valera to process. In her culture, systems were designed to prevent such pressure. Individuals were never expected to push beyond safe limits. Yet here, humans seemed to accept strain as part of cooperation. Midday arrived, but Alina skipped lunch to assist with an unexpected emergency. Valera felt increasing concern. By Alliance standards, this level of sustained effort bordered on dangerous. "Do humans receive additional rewards for this behavior?" she asked Daniel. "Sometimes," he said, "but often it's just part of the job." Valera found that answer unsettling. As afternoon approached, Alina's movement slowed slightly, but her focus remained sharp. She spoke kindly to patients, even those who appeared difficult or frustrated. One elderly patient held her hand and thanked her softly. Alina smiled, and her fatigue seemed to fade for a moment. Valera noticed something unusual. Emotional interaction appeared to restore energy, at least temporarily. She recorded the observation carefully. Finally, after nearly 10 hours, Alina completed her hospital shift. Valera assumed the day's work had ended. Instead, Alina collected her belongings and said, "Now the second part of the day starts." Valera tilted her head. "You are beginning another work session." Alina laughed gently. "Not exactly." They traveled back toward her home, stopping at a store where Alina purchased food quickly. She moved efficiently through aisles, choosing items without hesitation. "Is this leisure activity?" Valera asked. "Groceries," Alina said. "Necessary?" At home, a young child ran toward Alina and hugged her tightly. Her expression changed immediately, becoming warm and relaxed despite visible exhaustion. She prepared food while helping with homework. She listened to stories about school, gave advice, and encouraged the child gently. Valera observed quietly. "This is not considered work?" she asked Daniel. "Most humans wouldn't call it work," he replied. "But it takes effort." Later, Alina opened a computer and began studying medical materials. "You are continuing professional development after a full work cycle?" Valera asked. Alina nodded. "I want to qualify for a better position." "Why pursue additional strain?" Alina thought for a moment. "To improve life for my family and myself." Valera felt something shift inside her understanding. Humans did not separate effort into rigid categories. Responsibilities flowed together: professional, personal, emotional. The princess decided to ask the question directly. "Alina," she said, "how many times can humans work in a single day?" Alina paused, considering the question carefully. "I don't know," she said slowly. "As many times as we have to." The answer matched Daniel's earlier explanation, but now carried deeper meaning after witnessing the full day. Night approached. Alina finally sat down, exhaustion visible in her posture. Yet she still checked messages and prepared items for the next morning. Valera reviewed the collected data. By all Alliance models, Alina should have experienced severe cognitive decline. Instead, she remained functional, even compassionate. "How is this sustainable?" Valera whispered. Daniel smiled slightly. "Humans adapt." "But adaptation alone cannot explain this," she said. "Your species exceeds predicted endurance repeatedly." He thought for a moment before answering. Maybe it's not just physical endurance, maybe it's emotional. Valera considered that possibility carefully. As the day ended, Alina thanked them politely and prepared for sleep. Her routine would begin again in only a few hours. Back aboard the flagship, Valera analyzed the recordings late into the night. Stress levels high, recovery periods minimal, emotional motivation constant. She realized her original question had misunderstood the human perspective. Humans did not count work sessions. They measured effort in purpose. The realization unsettled her deeply. She prepared her report for the Alliance Council, knowing her conclusions might challenge long-held assumptions about biological limits. For the first time since arriving on Earth, she felt genuine respect mixed with awe. Perhaps humans were not ignoring limits. Perhaps they were redefining them. Princess Valera stood alone in the quiet observation chamber of the Galactic Alliance flagship. Outside the transparent wall, Earth turned slowly, its oceans reflecting sunlight while city lights faded with morning. She had watched the planet for hours without moving, replaying the events of the previous day again and again. Alina's routine continued to replay in her mind: the long hours, the constant motion, the steady kindness despite exhaustion. Every measurement she had gathered contradicted the Alliance's biological models. Humans should have slowed down long before reaching that level of strain, yet they did not. She activated the display panel and reviewed the data once more. Heart rate elevated but stable. Cognitive response times slightly reduced yet functional, emotional engagement high. It made no sense through traditional scientific frameworks. Daniel entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of steaming liquid. "You've been awake all night," he said gently. "I do not require the same rest cycle as humans," she replied, though her voice held a hint of distraction. He handed her one of the drinks anyway. She examined it briefly before taking a cautious sip. "Humans call it tea," he explained. She nodded, returning her attention to the data. "I believed I understood endurance," she said after a moment, "but what I observed cannot be explained solely by physical capacity." Daniel leaned against the wall, watching Earth below. "So what do you think now?" She hesitated. "I believe the question I asked was incorrect." He smiled slightly. "Which part? When I asked how many times humans work daily, I assumed work existed as a defined cycle, yet humans do not divide effort in the same way." Daniel nodded slowly. "We usually just keep going until the day ends." "That is precisely the problem," she said. "It violates logical efficiency models." "Maybe," he said, "or maybe it just means our logic is different." She did not respond immediately. Instead, she began preparing her presentation for the Alliance Council. Hours later, the chamber filled once again with representatives from dozens of civilizations. Some arrived with visible curiosity, others with skepticism. Rumors about her findings had already spread across the ship. The moderator called the meeting to order. "Princess Valera will present her conclusions regarding human activity patterns." She stepped forward, calm but focused. "Harmonic species maintain structured work cycles to preserve biological balance," she began. "Initial analysis suggested humans operated inefficiently by exceeding safe limits." Several delegates nodded in agreement. "However," she continued, "direct observation reveals that this conclusion is incomplete." Images appeared behind her, scenes from the hospital, city streets, families interacting, workers collaborating. These recordings document one human subject over a single planetary day. The subject maintained extended effort across multiple environments without structured recovery periods. A murmur spread through the chamber. An insectoid scientist raised a limb. "That suggests systemic instability." "On the contrary," Valera replied. "The subject demonstrated emotional resilience and functional stability despite physical strain." She highlighted key data points showing how emotional interactions temporarily restored energy levels. "Humans appear capable of sustaining effort beyond expected thresholds when motivated by relational factors." Another delegate spoke. "Define relational factors." She paused briefly. "Responsibility, connection, purpose." The translator hesitated slightly before completing the sentence. "These elements create a feedback loop that enhances endurance beyond biological predictions." One council member leaned forward. "You suggest humans can override physical limitations through emotional stimulus." "Not override," she corrected. "Extend." She shifted the display again. During observation, a minor technical issue occurred on an orbital maintenance platform above Earth. Before Alliance technicians could respond, a group of human workers voluntarily remained active for 19 continuous hours to stabilize the system. Gasps filled the chamber. "They were not commanded," someone asked. "No," she said. "They acted because others depended on the outcome." Silence followed. The princess felt a growing certainty as she continued. "My original question was how many times humans work daily. The correct answer cannot be measured in numerical cycles. Humans do not define work solely by structured tasks." She paused, remembering Alina's words. "They continue as many times as necessary." The council grew quiet. "For most species, endurance is a biological trait. For humans, endurance appears to be a chosen behavior influenced by emotional bonds." She displayed another scene, a parent helping a child with homework after a long workday. "Human effort does not end when official labor concludes. Personal responsibility extends activity beyond standard limits." A reptilian delegate spoke carefully. "Such behavior risks long-term damage." "Yes," she agreed. "Humans acknowledge this risk, yet they persist." "Why?" another asked. She hesitated before answering. "Because they believe their actions matter." The simplicity of the statement seemed to settle over the room like gravity. One advisor whispered to another, clearly unsettled. The princess continued, her voice steady. "This mindset creates a species capable of extraordinary persistence. When humans believe someone depends on them, they expand their endurance." She looked around the chamber. "If humanity ever perceives the galaxy itself as dependent on them, their potential output may exceed all predictive models." The moderator remained silent for several seconds before speaking. "Your conclusion?" She took a breath. "Human endurance is not defined by physical limits alone. It is defined by purpose." No one spoke immediately. The silence felt heavy but thoughtful. After the meeting ended, Daniel approached her. "That went well," he said. She looked thoughtful rather than relieved. "I believe I understand now why your species progresses rapidly despite apparent inefficiency." "Oh," he asked. "Because humans do not stop at logical boundaries," she said. "You continue until emotional fulfillment is achieved." Daniel laughed softly. "That sounds about right." Later, Valera returned to the observation chamber alone. She opened a private recording log. "This is Princess Valera," she began quietly. "Personal reflection." She paused, searching for words. "I have studied countless civilizations, yet humanity presents a paradox. They operate at the edge of exhaustion, yet maintain compassion. They experience fatigue, yet continue. They recognize limits, yet choose to approach them repeatedly." She looked down at Earth, now glowing with evening lights again. "I asked how many times humans work daily. I expected a numerical answer. Instead, I discovered a philosophical one." She remembered Alina sitting at her kitchen table, helping her child despite visible exhaustion. "Humans do not work in cycles," she said softly. "They live in commitments." She stopped recording for a moment, considering one final thought. Daniel entered quietly, leaning against the doorway. "You're still thinking about the question," he said. "Yes," she admitted. "One more remains. What happens when humans finally reach their limit?" Daniel thought for a moment. "We rest," he said simply, "and then we get back up." She stared at him, realizing there was no exact translation for that mindset within her culture. It was not efficiency. It was not obligation. It was something deeper. She resumed her recording. Conclusion: human endurance is emotional, relational, and chosen. This makes them unpredictable, but also uniquely powerful. She ended the log and watched Earth for a long time. For the first time, she felt certain that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or physical capability. It was the quiet decision to keep going, again and again, whenever someone needed them. And that realization left her speechless.